Greetings and welcome. I am Joffrey, and today I've just decided to hop in a call with a couple of my friends, Goatbush and Nemcraft here, because of this particular poll. Now this is my. I clicked no on this poll from Paradox. They made the EU4 YouTube channel made this community post, and there is a lot of weight on one particular side of the scale. And we started yapping about it, and I thought, why not just record it? Because we're saying all sorts of thoughts and opinions. And by and large, the three of us have myself. I do not like the current state of mission trees at all. We have Nemcraft, who by and large likes the concept of where they're at, I do believe, and Goatbush is somewhat in he is a fence sitter. He's somewhat in the middle. So,
Radical centrist, if you will.
of course, the radical centrist, indeed. Sippy sippy. All right. So, to get us started off again, the way that mission trees originally were introduced to EU4 back in the olden times was very simple, and you can see some remnants of that with Scotland, for example, where Scotland is a more advanced version of the old mission tree style, where it was focused on giving noticeable, flavorful, temporary modifiers, claims, and other such things. You wouldn't have large permanent bonuses, but now what happens these days, you will have the rather bloated mission trees of nations like Austria and Castile, which have incredibly large game-changing effects, such as Castile gets to change Sevilla, I believe it is, into producing cloves, the rarest trade good in the game, which it's a fact not many people actually know about on the server for whatever reason. And Austria, actually, no, Spain's honestly a better example because Spain and Austria both get missions to PU, basically 80% of Europe, and have all sorts of other permanent bonuses to affect their game. And I do not like that sort of infinite, well, those large bonus modifier stacking effects for completing a mission that will, for the rest of the game, cause those countries to just be stronger. I don't mind the initial implementation where some countries have these missions that help guide them to achieve historical objectives, but I want to feel like I can play as any old prince in the Empire or the Basques or some Balkan country and be just as valid as the country next to them that has expansive mission trees. If that makes sense. What's
Which the whole reason why mission trees were created in this way in the first place is because there are certain nations that were quote unquote historical winners. There are some that were more important in the HRE over the time period of EU4 than others. So people would naturally want to play as them, and they would want to experience some of the historical historical events that happened to those nations. So, for example, with Spain being the great Spain having taken over basically the entire New World, all of Mexico, all of South America, even though this is a very big fluke, it was not guaranteed to happen. It was actually almost guaranteed to not happen if it were not for a couple conquistadors happening to disregard the orders of the government. The point being that, despite the fact that these are very niche and uncommon occurrences, the fact that people would want to replicate these events is part of why the mission trees gain prevalence for specific countries over other countries.
But with EU4 or EU5 kind of making these dynamic events, and I mean, we haven't really seen a whole lot of them. Just a couple of the YouTubers have really showed some of them off. I think we have the chance in EU5 to, like, they've made the mechanic itself to kind of guide them in that sort of direction. And I feel like with mission trees, they release them through DLC and they kind of, have to focus on certain aspects of development and they can only focus so much due to the team being so big and manpower and etc etc. So only certain people ended up with those mission trees. But with these like unique events, they seem like a lot less work, and you know what I'm getting at. And that's why I mean, if mission trees get implemented, I would like to see them done in a little bit more of a this country can just outright win because they clicked this button now and they get 20%, cav to infantry ratio, and they get
No, I'm
all
not
of this
arguing that.
TCA.
No, no, one second. I'm not arguing that mission trees should be give you all these massive bonuses. That's clearly not what EU5 is doing anyway. Because, for example, in EU4, Sikhism gave morale of armies. You were able to stack that a lot higher. EU5 isn't really doing that, so that's already a clear shift in the development process.
Well, we did
point is
discuss
more
that they're doing tech bonuses for Seek instead, though.
Yeah.
That's a different situation, though,
Mhm.
because tech is more spread out. Anyway, going back to the original point,
Mhm.
the fact that they're not just giving out military bonuses like that means that they're clearly probably won't do it for mission trees either. What I was saying is that I don't think that mission trees being bigger and more expensive makes them inherently bad. I do agree that permanent bonus stacking was a problem, and they probably are already fixing that by. One of the things in EU4 was how you could just play as a, like, for example, Brittany, and then like form France or the Croatia into Hungary and just stack both mission trees. I don't think that.
Mhm.
How do I explain this? I don't think that that's going to be the case in this game if they did have mission trees, because they seem to be more on a cultural basis.
I feel
And
that
the way you can switch cultures in EU5 seems much more difficult and time consuming, where you have to convert all your pops.
I would like that. That is a key thing for me too. The fact that I always talk about wanting to play Durham, for example, in the British Isles, and if say the English tag had a mission tree, then and it's would give you all these bonuses, then I would feel like I didn't have an objective to do until I become England. What if I don't want to become England? Huh? What if I don't want to have to form that tag? What if I want to feel just as valid playing the game as this small tag that I chose to start out as, instead of having to do all the work. There's an achievement, Never Say Nevers, in EU4 for conquering all of France's nevers and not changing, not changing to be France by a certain year. And
There's two arguments I'd make there. The first one being that I don't think, I don't think this was ever the case in EU4, and it probably will be even less the case in EU5. Mission trees don't make your game more or less valid, especially in a game that's less focused on blobbing, for lack of a better term, or expanding very quickly. But the other point that I'd like to make is that this is already going to be the case, for example, for events, the ones that
Okay.
we've already been talking about. They will be English events will probably be based on, having English culture, and there probably will be some tag-specific events. I don't think mission trees inherently would be any different than what events are already doing, except for the fact that they might I don't think they're even going to do it EU4, but if they did have these, stacking bonuses, that will be the only real difference.
I kind of do like the idea of having like a cultural mission tree. That does seem like it might add a nice dynamic that allows smaller tags that weren't necessarily the quote unquote historical winners to kind of win.
I don't mind
It's
that.
an interesting idea.
I will say I do not
Yeah.
mind that idea at all. The idea that you could play as the Principality of Wales, and I'm using British Isles examples because they're some of the obvious ones that come to mind for me. You play as the Principality of Wales, and they start as an English culture tag, and if you manage to defeat England during the 100 Years' War, you throw off the shackles, and maybe you could then have content like you would have the same options for missions that the proper English country would have, despite being weaker. I wouldn't mind that, and I would not mind if, again, if there are missions for countries, as long as those missions don't make me feel like I have to play this country now because they have this mission tree. Just like I don't think that right now the countries that have dynamic historical events are going to make you feel like I need to play that country because they have all of these events. They feel like they're going to be flavorful and make them more interesting, but not like it's the correct one to play. Because if you're playing EU4 right now, we're talking about like EU4 right now with the modifier stacking and such. If you're playing in the British Isles and you play as Ireland, you're as horrible as it is to say, you're not going to stay as Ireland. You're going to culture convert to English to form Britain. Because Britain's got all of the insane missions and permanent bonuses, and the English culture is just objectively better because they've got the wooden wall thing. We were playing a game the other day, Nemcraft and I, where I'm playing as a Gaelic Scotland, and Gaelic Scotland is just worse because it means that they can't get the Anglicanism event and they can't get wooden wall. There's all sorts of things like that they just can't have, and I still am, I guess. Goat is talking a lot about preaching caution about the dynamic historical events as well, a tentative enthusiasm about them, because the dynamic historical events, we don't know enough about them or what causes you to get them, because maybe a lot of them will be tag specific and you'll need to form England, because we've seen there's a lot of nation formation stuff that exists, and a lot of so maybe most of it is going to be tied to tag specifically, and I will be a sad boy. But I'll rest my case. The main thing that I want to bring to the table today is the fact that I do not like the permanent modifier stacking, and that I don't think, do any of us in this call disagree with the fact that Imperator-style missions, which I don't think Nemcraft is very aware of them though, where the focus is on dynamically appearing options for mission trees, where you can select one, complete that mission, or abandon it partway through and then choose a new one, where they dynamically appear and they don't give you permanent bonuses, but they guide you in a certain area. As in, you might get a mission like I was playing Ethiopia in Imperator, and it's Axum, and the mission will be like just develop it's like develop and pacify or something a certain region, the Upper Nile, because that place is not my accepted culture and there's tons of low developed tribal lands. So then the mission tree is focused around making these regions your culture and building up cities that will be loyal population centers, stuff like that.
There is one thing that I would argue against with Imperator missions. From what I understand, I haven't played Imperator Rome that much, but they do seem to me to be relatively more generic because they're focusing more on, well, there's two parts. One is that you've got certain regions have shared trees, and then within those shared trees for various regions, they have kind of the similar objectives where, like you were saying, develop a certain region,
Mm-hmm.
conquer this other region. And the point I'm trying to make is more that I don't think those are bad. I like having more available mission trees for more people, but I do worry that focusing on those kinds of mission trees would take away from some of the more unique content that EU4 had for various nations. For me, it was not a problem of, oh, because Scotland doesn't have the same content England has as an objectively worse pick, which it is true, but I don't think that's because the mission tree themselves was. I don't think that's because the mission tree was bad. It was because Scotland didn't have the same level of flavor. So, in my opinion, at least, I think the solution is to just add more like flavor for more people, than try to just group everything up into more generic options. If that makes any sense.
Well, just go to something to say. Sorry.
Well, with that comes manpower, and that comes, company spending, and that means there's going to be more DLCs because they have to make their money back on that sort of stuff. And we'll be kind of still stuck in the EU4 style of, well, they just haven't gotten around to giving this person a mission tree, or
I do not want to be go said exactly what I was going to say. Yes. My fear is that we will reach a point if there is an emphasis on making these specific mission trees that are large for every country, that we will be getting those DLC where it adds nothing but mission trees. The last 3 DLCs that came out for EU4 were just mission trees. And okay, they're just mission trees, but then they spruce it up with a couple soundtracks. They'll be like, here's like 3 songs and a unit model for this country you've never realized was on the map, just by playing for 1,000 hours. That sort of thing. I don't. I would be now, mind you. Maybe Goat and I will be blindsided, and there instead we'll be getting dynamic historical event DLC, and you'll be seeing in 5 years from now, Goat and I will be decrepit old men in our 30s, and we'll be looking back at this going, "Oh, damn! If only we knew that in the year of our Lord 2033." they would be releasing the Cahokia dynamic historical event pack, which gives them 500 events.
Which I will say that is part of the point that I'm trying to make. That in essence, what they're doing with historical events or another flavor or another event flavor is almost exactly what mission trees accomplished in EU4. Probably with the exception of permanent modifiers. We don't know how many they're actually going to give, but it is very similar, except for the fact that with mission trees, it feels more connected and more planned out, which is something I prefer to events which feel a lot more sporadic.
Because you can't complete one event and be like, I can see where the through line is to the next one. That's the point?
Yes, I like looking at a mission tree and seeing, oh, this is the starting plan. This is what the goals that for my country that I can accomplish later. I can prepare for these things and do these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
I can definitely understand that, and because of the fact that I wasn't concerned until this thing we've got in the background. Now I wasn't concerned until I saw this poll, because I thought, because they told us there was going to be Imperator missions, and Imperator missions, the thing you don't know, Nem, is that most countries in Imperator. No, that's not true. There was the mod that added a lot of them. But the countries that did have missions in Imperator, they still had those flavorful historical driven content. But there were very few in the way of permanent bonuses you'd get from it. You would get a bonus, or it would give you something. Like I definitely do not by any means mind things like before we started recording, Goat was bringing up the topic of someone conquers something, give the Byzantines something where it's like this mission instantly maybe it converts a number of people to be Greek, for example. You're reconquering Anatolia, convert a certain amount of the culture there to be Greek Orthodox again. Can make something instantly integrated, because this is you know, stuff like that. I don't mind, because it's not a permanent bonus. It just is a bonus that has an effect now. You can feel it. You're happy to click this because it helps, but it's not something that anyone else couldn't do. Does that make sense? I don't, because I don't like things where it's like, well, you see, you press this button on the Byzantine mission tree, and now because you completed all these things, they now have this permanent. They have a lot of those, but the one that I'm thinking about specifically, I think that keeps coming to mind is Austria, and it being, well, they've got like 3 different events. They give them permanent extra Diplo rep, and it's like, no, why? And there's also the stuff for Austria that's like they complete a mission and it causes randomly people to get events where it's like, oh, a Habsburg heir. This is just all that sort of thing is just silly. It'll be like, oh, you have an Habsburg as your heir now. You just because.
Okay, to be fair, the Habsburg heir one was never going to happen in EU5 just based on how they handle marriages.
Yes.
You can't just spawn heirs. Like, I think everyone knew that one.
I'm starting to go on a bit of a tangent with that one, but the point I was trying to make is that the things in Imperator, you would have the dynamic missions, but you would also have like the Diadochi have their successor wars missions relating to that,
Okay.
and
I see.
there's flavorful stuff relating to it, but none of it is a permanent modifier that means that they would be just better than anyone else. Mind you, they are just stronger. They're just better, technically. But the point is that I don't want anyone to have a mission that makes them have something that someone else couldn't achieve through their own effort. Now,
Yeah, which I agree with. That all depends, however, on how U5 will be structured, just technology-wise or other areas of the game-wise. Because the reason why, like again, right, the reason why U4 had all these permanent buffs, and especially more as the game progressed, is because they didn't do a very good job of balancing certain aspects, or not even balancing. They didn't do a very good job of setting up the technology and research such that
mhm,
it would the how do you explain this? The simulation would accurately represent the way the world works. For example, they had to make institutions the way they did because otherwise anyone, well, even like with deving, anyone could just spawn the Renaissance or a printing press in their capital, and therefore
yeah,
they wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
There would be no technology disparity that was in the society. For example, in the 18th and 19th centuries. My point is that in EU5, from what I've seen so far, they seem to be doing a much better job of representing historical disparities like that to the point where they can actually get rid of some of these permanent buffs because they don't need those to be a crutch, in a sense, to try to
hmm.
make it more historically accurate. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can definitely see 'cause the Lucky Nations bonuses too. We just discussed that the other day. You didn't even know that was a thing in the game, and I completely forgot, so I didn't turn it off for our multiplayer game. Uh, where I was like, oh no, Austria has Lucky Nation bonus. I didn't realize, and yada yada yada. Which is part of why the Turks got so big in that game. But the mission trees and things like that will just they help the countries that are also they are there to help the countries that are supposed to win, and I think that EU5 is straying away from that sort of thing a bit. They're trying to open more room for the sandbox because, and I think that's a good thing because uh, I've heard all sorts of people wanting to be like, no, it shouldn't, like, it should not happen that like this outcome happens. You should not have like
Well, no, that's
you should not have like Novgorod or Kiev becoming the dominant Rus power, for example. You should not have pagan Lithuania winning 50% of the time, kind of thing. And I'm just like, I don't care about the like how often you have the historical outcome happen because this game is even further back in the past. There's
it is.
like
But the point that I was trying to make, though, is that
And
I
it goes
kind of
further.
agree that historical outcomes should be more weighted.
Okay.
My hope, though, is that from what I've seen of EU5, is trying to do this, accomplish the same goal of making it more historically weighted by just having the natural setup. For example, the Byzantines, they don't just give you like a million like artificial debuffs from estates. They just make your setup really bad to the point where like it's nothing that's a artificial part of the game. It's just the natural setup that you have based on your stability and other factors.
because you do have penalties as them, but none. But theoretically, from what the three of us saw, there's nothing that for them that's like just a you are now in a actually maybe they are in a disaster, but the point is that most of the penalties are focused around just even when there's a disaster, the penalties you get aren't just like, oh, decline of the mandate of heaven, like, sorry, your mandate of heaven, you're playing China, your mandate is low, so now you have minus like 50% morale on all of your troops and stuff like that.
No, that part wasn't like as bad. What I mean is that the penalty that the Byzantines have is something that any player could reasonably get if they were playing the Byzantines and also declined. That's my point. It's
Yes.
nothing that's just there because the devs needed the Byzantines to be bad.
There's a
And that's
general,
what I'm hoping that they've done with the rest of the game. So far, it seems that way, but I haven't actually played it.
but by and large, it seems that they are trying to get, and that is a very satisfying thing to see. When we've had lots of conversations on the server about the fact that Delhi and Yuan fall apart, though Yuan doesn't fall apart as well as it should. Delhi falls apart really well though. Um, they fall apart due to natural game systems. There's also content that like is revolving around it, but it's driven by just the core game systems screwing them over.
Yes, and what I was trying to explain is that this is why I think any potential mission trees in EU5
Okay.
won't be nearly as bad as EU4 mission trees, because they don't have that added weight of trying to like make or trying to force things to be more historical, because the game is already being set up to facilitate that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I suppose I guess you've allayed my concern a little bit, because it's just I don't know how Goat feels, but it's just when I look at this particular this poll scares me, because it makes me think like they're gonna listen too much to its outcome, and they might look at this poll and take its outcome of 83%, yes, mission trees are important, and take it as, all right, well, sorry, Johan, and they pat him on the shoulder and say, sorry, you had a good run, we now need to have the EU4 mission trees again, with all of their permanent bonuses, and Castile is gonna have missions 15 years into the game to PU Portugal, just because here's your free restoration of union on Portugal, because or things like that. No, please no.
See, what I want content for, like on a more serious note, but like what I actually want content for with PUs is the Kalmar Union. I think that should be something like that you should be able to form with some, like, maybe not entirely with mission trade, but you should have some kind of flavor that helps you get there.
And you can have dynamic stuff with like Lithuania converting or not. That could be an interesting dynamic option. Because that's a big one for me too. As I don't know, go. What do you feel about like how most of vanilla EU4's missions are very static, except for like at the very end they started to go into like they changed Austria to have like the branching path to form Germany. But what are your thoughts on that sort of thing?
I feel like the way that the EU4 mission system is set up, it makes a lot of things happen artificially, whereas in EU5 there are a lot of just natural game mechanics that make events happen and things happen that, you know, happened historically. If you get what I'm meaning.
Well, I get what you're saying, which is what we have been talking about actually pretty much this entire time. Artificial in the sense that it's not like you went to the, like, as as Portugal, or no, as Castile. It's not like you went there to Austria, right? It's not like Austria went to Castile to put a Habsburg on the throne, and they had like an actual loyal lines interweaving to get this royal marriage. It's just the mission needs you to do it, and so you got it, and that's kind of how it went.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing
it. Like a game system that could just make it happen natural on your own without the mission tree. You needed the mission tree to do it.
Or like, I guess this is kind of a bad example, but like, say you need like 200 mana to be able to get the next tech so you can actually fight this person who's been attacking you, and you click a button on a mission and boom, there's your 200 mana. Now you tech up, now you kick the dude's butt, and you're just able to win the war because you have higher tech than them. It's like, that's something that just feels kind of artificial.
Yeah,
that doesn't feel so artificial to me. That is itself is not too bad, because by EU4 standards you can still get mill points on your own. There are other ways to reach the same objective. What I don't like is, for example, you have a mission that you click, and it gives you 10% morale of armies.
Oh no, it would usually be like 15%. It would be like France's mission Show Elon, and that's like 15% more. Yeah.
Again, my point being that mill points you can make more of on your own by hiring advisors, other things.
But it takes time.
10% morale. No, that it takes time, but it's still possible. With this with this extra morale of armies, that's not something that you can just get on your own. factors being equal, you will just be better because of a button that you clicked. Through no ability of your own. That feels very artificial to me.
Yeah.
And they're probably still gonna have some stuff like that. I don't like them, but they're probably still gonna have stuff like that.
I would prefer the buffs to be more things like, oh, you can unlock a new unit, because you have to still build those units. That still revolves around things that you need to do, like outside of a mission.
Yeah, it's a very tricky subject, and this video, this recording has now just passed the 30-minute mark, which will surprise both you two, I'm sure. But yeah, that's how this always goes, I suppose. So we should probably try to wrap this up because we're starting to go in a bit of circles.
Don't forget your outro this time.
I won't forget my outro this time. Okay. What other closing thoughts do we want to have then? It seems that we all have come to a pretty similar conclusion by the end of this discussion, though.
I am not opposed, I guess, to mission trees. I just want them to be handled with kit gloves.
Because to answer the question, for this poll, the answer to the question for Goat and I is still, I think, no. Are they important to you? No. Nemcraft, they are important, but all three of us agree on what kinds of missions we want. If they exist, we want them to be the same way. Goat and I don't think it matters if they exist at all, and you think you do want them. All three of us, if they do exist, want the same kind.
I think so, at least, yeah.
Which is to say, then, we all like the kinds of missions that are... It guides you in a direction that you could take historically. Even better if there's an alternate path that's like, oh, do something else quirky and guide me along that story, because that's also fun. Oh, now I get options. Yay! This is cool, because choices are fun. But the key point being, they should not be giving you these big bonuses that last for, especially not ones that last forever, that make it just the correct choice to play a country that has one of these instead of someone that does not.
For me, it's not so much about whether it makes you the correct choice to play. The specific argument I would say for mission bonuses is that they should not ever be a bonus that you could not just get on your own.
Yeah.
As long as it's something that's with reasonably you could just do through enough time and effort, then it's fine.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things I also like. Yeah. So, with that, we can wrap up this little spontaneous rant the three of us are having. Oh, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye. Bye 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 bye.